Farabaugh, and I'm John Luciew, and we are live on YouTube. If it's Tuesday around 4 p.m., that's where we're going to be throughout training camp, throughout the preseason, and of course, throughout the regular season, and dare I say, playoffs? Well, we'll see about that. But one thing, what a difference a week makes. TJ Watt is signed, sealed, and delivered. And matter of fact, just earlier, hours ago, he put ink to paper and made that big whopping deal extension official. And apparently, per Jerry Dulac with the Post-Gazette, this is exactly how Mike Tomlin wanted it to play out. Get it done before training camp opens tomorrow, so there are no distractions. But certainly now, as Nick is going to be in Latrobe tomorrow, as those doors open and the players stream in, we'll be looking at this high-priced defense, and we'll be looking at Watt. In photos, we noticed that, hey, maybe he did bulk up. Maybe he's going to switch more to a power game. So Nick, what are the early indications in practice as you're going to be watching and scrutinizing for if Watt is going to change his game into his early 30s, and certainly on the back end, how they're going to use that other newly acquired chess piece of Jalen Ramsey in this defense that at this point has no excuses. It has to dominate, especially given the high-powered offenses in their own division and in the AFC writ large. When are we going to get some indications on how this defense is going to operate?
Yeah, I think we're going to get that sooner rather than later. I don't think it's going to take very long for us to kind of figure out how good the Steelers defense is going to be. And here's why. This Steelers defense is one that needs to be more diverse. It's one that needs to be less static, because that was the big thing last year. They just ran so much rush 4, spot drop cover 3, cover 1. There wasn't a lot of mixing and matching and doing fun things on the back end or even up front. They didn't blitz very often. And when they did try to do it, John, it was miscommunications. You remember this. We talked about this all last year. And so this year, I think we're going to see, how does Gerald Alexander's kind of role as a new secondary coach, how has he kind of instilled it specifically towards communication? I think that's the basic thing. No coverage bust, I think, is a good thing, as long as those kind of work themselves out. By the end of camp, you shouldn't be having many coverage busts with your first team defense. I think how they use Jalen Ramsey is going to be so huge. We don't necessarily know what he's going to do just yet. Is he going to be a full outside corner? Is he going to be a slot? Or how they're going to mix him at safety? Like, what are they going to do? I think they're going to do a little bit of everything there. So I think he's going to be a kind of chess piece, but I'm interested to see that. And then I am interested to see TJ Watt. You talk about this guy. We're kind of in uncharted territory with TJ Watt. For so many years, he was like the non-questioned thing, right? You knew you were going to get elite football play from TJ Watt. And I think he's still going to be really good, but he looks a little bigger this year. He's 30, going to be 31 in October. So how does he look this year? Is he more of a power rusher? Does he switch sides? Does he start to move around the formation more? I think all these are real questions. This defense, for as much as they have changed and the new players they have added, there are things from last year that need to change from coaching-wise and on a personnel standpoint. They need better play out of Patrick Queen, for example. He needs to be much more consistent than he was last year. This defensive line, I feel like, we talked about it so much during the lead up to the draft and after the draft, after the Steelers went so heavily into their trenches. How does Derek Harmon look? How does Y.A. Black look? Keanu Benton into critical year 3. All these things are really important. So, we're not going to know the true nature of the Steelers defense until we start to get into games. But I think we could start to glean some little things here, throughout training camp. And so I'm really interested to see schematic changes that they're going to put in. I mentioned that yesterday in the episode, that I think they need to change a lot of things schematically and then personnel-wise. So lots of storylines to follow on the defense.
Yes, and how soon into camp do we, will practices reveal some of these things? I mean, how long does it take for practice to get warmed up when you're actually going to do some of these schematics?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, if you are out there like really early on, and I mean, they do walk through before practice where they kind of just line up in their nickel or their dime or their base, and they will walk through things. And if you can look at stuff and kind of really dive into it, you can see things really quickly. Who's going to be the dime backer, these blitzes they're working on installing, these coverages that they want to work on. Like there's so many different things you can learn very quickly. So I'm not saying we're going to learn it on Thursday, but I think by the end of next week, when we have seen a few practices and pads, really by probably this time next week, we should know a little bit more about the schematics and the roles these guys are going to play. So it doesn't take very long. The Steelers kind of hit the ground running with their schematics early on in camp, so we will probably see it fairly early on.
Cool, and I can't wait to read your analysis of that. I mean, just guys, he's going to be there for all the hot and sweaty practices, and his keen eye will deliver some of the insight that what the Steelers D is building in this 2025 training camp toward this season, where at least on the defensive side of the ball, the expectations have to be sky high right now, and they have to deliver because I mean they're in a just AFC North where you got the Ravens and you got that running game that you got to shut down. You got that mobile quarterback that you got to shut down. And then you got Burrow and his arm and Chase and everybody that you got to shut down. I mean, that defense just has to rise to the occasion. And of course, the larger AFC is just loaded with offense. Speaking of offense, I mean, there's a lot new on that side of the ball for the Steelers. And when we last saw Aaron Rodgers, he had gotten his printed out copy of the playbook. He didn't want it on the tablet, he wanted it printed out, and he was going to comb through it and then get on the phone with Arthur Smith and talk about the plays that he liked. And so I mean, how much of a rewrite of this Arthur Smith offense is underway to suit it for Aaron Rodgers, and what will be the first signs of that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think it's going to be a drastic shift because Arthur Smith does a lot of things that Matt LaFleur did, and that's where Aaron Rodgers played 4 years under him in Green Bay, won 2 MVPs there. Rodgers' kind of career revitalization in the early 2020s under Matt LaFleur was all tied to this kind of marriage of what Rodgers likes and what LaFleur likes. LaFleur was able to get him to go under center, do some play action, was able to get him to buy into some motion. So I think we're going to see that probably in this offense. I think we're going to see a lot more spread looks, empty, gun, quick game. We'll see that stuff pop up, I think, probably fairly quickly. And I think that'll be something you'll see right away. But I think the biggest telltale sign is going to be seeing Rodgers just kind of man the line of scrimmage in training camp, his signals, the way he kind of commands a huddle and commands a play from the shotgun is very unique. He's got a unique cadence. He's a type of player that does have the ability to change plays. I mean, he likes to have that in his kind of play sheet. So usually when you look at play calls, and just for a basic play call, if a rookie quarterback came in, your average layman quarterback, there'd be usually 2 play calls in a play. Sometimes there's more. It depends. But, Rodgers, sometimes there's 4 to 5. I mean, he's that type of quarterback where he can kind of look and do that. So I think that's part of this. I think there needs to be more compromising from Arthur Smith this year. We saw he didn't really compromise a ton last year with Russell Wilson, and obviously that led to tensions, and it's part of the reason Russell Wilson is no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. And so I think that kind of collaboration is going to be important. The kind of dynamic between those two is very important. And I do think you're going to see Rodgers kind of buy into some of Smith's stuff, the play action underneath stuff. But I also think we're just going to see a lot more of traditional Arthur Smith offense. A lot of 13 personnel, a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of kind of condensing and spreading out the formation. You're going to see a lot of different things, I think, this year from Arthur Smith that you didn't see last year just because Russ was such a unique quarterback in the way he kind of targets areas of the field. So I do think we're going to see a different style of offense this year, but we will see Rodgers' fingerprints very early. It's not hard to tell when Rodgers has his hand on the pulse a little bit.
Interesting. And obviously, just from watching his storied career elsewhere, we know Rodgers loves having his guys, his go-to guys. Um, any early bets on, who's going to be his guys in this offense, and how do we judge the rapport, developing between his, how do we see that? What will be the signs of, okay, this is going to be his guy, and this is a play to look for in maybe a game or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, rapport with Rodgers is built over time, but I mean, when you see him starting to look at you before the snap, that's a part of that. I mean, I remember when he would love Alan Lazard, and he's always really liked Alan Lazard, and like Devontae Adams, he would route them up in specific ways. He would have that kind of innate chemistry where they would just kind of know where each other was. But the real kind of winners of the Rodgers sweepstakes, we were trying to become that guy, is either you have to be a really big, steady target. Mercedes Lewis was this for him for so long. And I think Darnell Washington's really going to like him. I think the second part is, can you be a really quick winner underneath? If you're a reliable winner in the quick game, he really likes you. I think of guys like Randall Cobb. When you think of his favorites, guys like that, Jordy Nelson, despite his size, was really good at that. So there are kind of telltale signs with that. If you're a detailed, quick winner, I think that's part of what he really likes. So I think Jonnu Smith probably going to be someone he really likes, because that's what Jonnu Smith is. And then the third thing is kind of this magnetism he has to you. He will kind of really coach up guys that are very detail oriented. Maybe the timing's a little off. You got to be, really on time with Rodgers. He's a guy that if you are not on time and he can't get it out right as you're breaking and you're doing this cute stuff, that's an issue. And that was something that really kind of sheared between him and Garrett Wilson last year. Garrett Wilson's kind of Teflon. He'll go for 1,000 yards no matter what, right? It doesn't matter who his quarterback is. John, you could be his quarterback and he'll go for 1,000 yards. Like, that's kind of what he's like. But he's a guy that is this kind of really precise route runner, but sometimes the timing stuff doesn't come out. And Rodgers isn't like that. You need to be a detailed, on-time type of route runner. So those players as well will become favorites of Aaron Rodgers. But I can probably tell you right now, I think the three tight ends, Washington, Freiermuth, and Smith, are very much going to profile with Rodgers. I think Metcalf fits a little murkier. I think the wide receiver room doesn't necessarily have a guy that you look at and point to as a telltale Rodgers guy. But I do think that there's obvious love that he's going to have for these tight ends.
Great. Yeah. And Jonnu Smith being one of the new chess pieces in that offense. The other one that fans just can't, and certainly, I'm a fantasy football nerd, and I just see it all over the place. Caleb Johnson is just to the moon, man. I mean, this guy is, the ultimate sleeper who's going to wake up and be Prince Charming. I mean, according to everybody that I see writing about fantasy football. So does he just inherit the Najee role, or is it something different that we have in mind for him? And what will be the early signs in practice of how much action he's going to see in games?
Well, I do think we're going to see some of that Najee role. We're going to see a zone runner that's a potential home run hitter. It's not really a Najee role as much as it is kind of his own role. He is such a natural zone runner, wide zone runner, mid zone runner, that he can break angles despite not having great instant acceleration. He kind of is a build up speed guy. When he gets going, though, and he's in the open field, I mean, he can really run. He's like a gazelle. He's so smooth as he runs in open space, and he can break angles. That's the thing about Caleb Johnson is, the 40 time was only 4.57, but that's because the first 10 yards weren't all that fast. When the last 30, he's zooming. And so I think that's the type of interesting thing with him is he's more of a home run hitter than Najee was. And he's the type of player that I think if he picks up on pass pro and picks up on the receiving side of the game, that's where you see him eating into a lot more time. he's going to play a lot right away, John. I mean, he's going to
Mhm.
play early downs. He's going to be a big part of this run game, just as the most natural wide zone runner on the team. The Steelers are going to run a ton of wide zone this year. I think Arthur Smith, for as much as he ran wide zone last year, I think they were sixth in wide zones still last year. He wants to run it even more. So they're going to run it more this year, and he's going to be the kind of engine to that. But Jaylen Warren is such a good pass protector. He is
Mhm.
such a good receiver. He is naturally going to be there and kind of being a floor blanket almost to this room. So Caleb Johnson, the telltale sign isn't necessarily going to be watching him through team drills. It's going to be how's he doing backs on backers? How's he coming along in pass pro? If the pass pro's coming along, Caleb Johnson can take the lion's share of the snaps earlier than you think. But if not, it's going to take him a little bit. So I've been always been a big Jaylen Warren fan too, and so I think he's probably going to eat into snaps regardless. But Caleb Johnson is such a diligent, detailed worker. It's not out of the realm of possibility we can see him eat into that more and more if that pass pro comes along quicker than people think.
And what was the breakdown last year with Najee and Warren? Was it a 50-50 proposition in terms of a snap count, or and are we expecting something similar with this duo that we're entering 2025 with?
Yeah, I mean, by the end of the season, Jaylen Warren was the starting running back. I mean, let's not mince words. 6 of the last 7 games, he outsnapped Najee Harris, and it wasn't all game script stuff. He just was straight up outsnapping him even on early downs, and so that is a shift I think we're probably going to see continue into the year. I think we're probably going to see Jaylen Warren take 55% of the snaps, somewhere around there. Caleb Johnson's going to get his stuff. Kenny Gainwell, I think, is going to play a little bit too. I think we're going to see 3 running backs play. So I don't want to count on Kenny Gainwell because I do think he's going to play to a degree in this offense. But I think Warren's going to take the lion's share of the snaps early. I actually think Johnson might take the lion's share of the carries just because he's going to play a lot on early downs, I think. Non-passing downs, he's probably going to be a guy that they hand the ball off to on 1st and 10 a lot. Second and short, where he can try and break big plays, especially when they go under center and pistol or wherever they are, and they're playing that 12 to 13 personnel that they're going to play a lot of. I mean, they're probably going to be tops in the league and potentially both of those categories with their tight end multiple offense. So Caleb Johnson's going to play a lot. But I do think we're going to see Jaylen Warren continue to play more than Caleb Johnson early on. I think he's going to be the starter week 1. And I think Jaylen Warren's really good. And so I really think when we think about Jaylen Warren playing, I think it's going to be hard to take him off the field because I think he's going to be a spark plug to this offense. And I think people, some people aren't necessarily high enough on him right now. I think some people are going to be surprised about what Jaylen Warren's going to bring.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm a big Jaylen Warren fan. And now that the big Watt deal has been put to bed, you had speculated a while ago that the Steelers now have a window between now and the start of the regular season when they stop doing deals, that maybe they'll make some other strategic signings. They certainly have some money. If we see Warren get a new deal, what does that indicate? The fact that he could be in line for a surprise signing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it would indicate that one, they think he's a legitimately good player. I mean, he's still not that old, and he doesn't have a lot of wear on his tires. I think that's another thing is we're not talking about a guy that's been run into the dirt, right? We're talking about a guy that still has, I think, a lot of years left where he's going to be a good player. And I think that matters when you're looking at this. I think it really does. And so, um, really, when you look at the Steelers and how they're going to kind of jump into all of this, I do think that Jaylen Warren is the type of player that you can really embrace and think, man, this guy is the type of player you want to have on your football team. He's a high character player. He's a quiet player. He's not necessarily a born leader, but he leads by example. He's the type of player that I think really deserves is kind of a culture builder type. I think he's a winning player and what he can do. And so we've seen teams before have these really good duos. I think of the Lions with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So we've seen some teams really kind of invest in these duos. I think the Steelers will just be following that. There's going to be such a run heavy offense no matter what. it's Arthur Smith's offense. And so I think it would send that message. I think he's just a winning player. And so that's kind of how I would read into Jaylen Warren if he did get an extension.
Okay. Now, speaking of other signings, I mean, we still have this debate about the wide receiver too. The receivers coach is on record saying that's Calvin Austin III. He is the wide receiver too. You have Roman Wilson in the mix. You said in that receiving room, other than the tight ends, well, maybe none of these are by definition a Rodgers guy. How are you looking at this receiver, this group of receivers, and what could happen in training camp that would change your appraisal of these guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to buy into a training camp performance as an answer. Listen, I know it's happened before. Jaylen Warren, for example, was one of those training camp standouts. So, I mean, it would just have to be a consistently great training camp for someone like Roman Wilson. Like, that's what, to me, would have me buy in, because I think if there's an answer on the roster that comes out of nowhere, it's going to be him. I like Calvin Austin. I think he's a good route runner. I think he's a good deep route runner. I think he can do some things like that, but I don't think he's a high usage player. I don't think he's a high snap player. I think they need another outside receiver. That's really what they need. They need another kind of big XZ type. Robert Woods at this stage of his career, like right now, I think they're looking at another Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson situation. I think Robert Woods would play a heck of a lot. He's a good blocker. He's kind of this old man type that does the dirty work, and I think that's going to get him a lot of snaps right now. And I think that's something that Steelers fans probably don't want to see again. Like there are places on the roster for Van Jefferson and Robert Woods, but it's not as your wide receiver 2, 3 type. It's just your wide receiver 4, 5 that can be this kind of depth piece for you. And so Roman Wilson would have to have a really good camp for me to change my mind on that. But even still, he's not necessarily an outside receiver. He's a slot receiver. He's an explosive slot receiver that can horizontally stretch the field and has great hands and is super coachable and is willing to stick his nose in the fan. But he is not necessarily a guy that I look at and think is going to be the do-it-all answer. And so I think they need to add somebody to this room. I think they need to feel more comfortable by adding somebody to this room. I'm not like a huge fan of Gabe Davis or Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper, but I would still feel better if they were there. You know what I mean? At least you have another outside wide receiver type with a guy like Davis. Keenan Allen, he's just kind of a talent ad. But, I do think they need to add somebody here. I would look at the trade market. I would look at the cut down market. Last year, guys like Tim Patrick and Noah Brown were available for the Steelers. So I would like to kind of see them scour that market, and they didn't grab Brown or Patrick. So I thought that was a missed opportunity for them. So I think if you look at kind of what I would like to see, John, it would be kind of adding another big-bodied receiver, because right now they're staring right down the hole of Robert Woods playing, 40 snaps a game.
And do you think it will happen? I know you'd like to see it happen, but given the way this offseason has gone to this date and everything that they have done, do you expect another move at receiver coming in from the outside?
I do think eventually it happens. I think that eventually they look at their wide receiver room and kind of say, hey, we need to add something here. It's just not enough. There's not enough injury insurance if Metcalf got hurt. I mean, Arthur Smith's offense runs off really good X receivers: A.J. Brown, Drake London, George Pickens, now DK Metcalf. If Metcalf got hurt, this offense it's a catastrophic injury to them. You need some insurance there. I just don't feel like there's any cushioning right now if Metcalf got hurt. And so I think you need somebody there that can at least hold that up. And so whether it comes a cut down day, which wouldn't surprise me, or if it's trade later or it's signing one of those free agents, I do think they need to add somebody, and I think they will end up adding somebody.
That makes a whole lot of sense when you talk about that. You lose Metcalf, that's just a catastrophic hamstringing this offense. Do you think Rodgers will have any input on who they might sign?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably will. I mean, for example, if the Jets are willing to cut loose Alan Lazard, I don't think we even have to ask the question anymore. Like the Steelers are going to sign Alan Lazard. But I'm not sure, he doesn't really have an affiliation with guys like Cooper or Allen. Maybe if they're in the trade market and Romeo Doubs from the Packers comes available, that's someone that Rodgers played with and really liked playing with. that would make sense. So I'm sure he'll have some say in it. But if the Steelers are looking for a trade chip, someone like Dubs or Dontavian Wicks or someone else off the kind of far map, I mean, that's a future move as much as it is a now move. So you can only give Aaron Rodgers so much input there, but he will have a say, just like Arthur Smith's going to have a say. And Arthur Smith's had a say in personnel moves. I mean, you can look at the kind of fingerprints upon what they have done. They haven't done a lot of moves to appease Aaron Rodgers, have they? They've done a lot to appease Arthur Smith, though. Jonnu Smith coming in last year, Michael Pruitt and Van Jefferson and Scotty Miller and all of those guys. So a lot of connections to Arthur Smith. So Smith and Rodgers will have a say, but Rodgers isn't going to have as much of a say as you think. But hey, if someone like Dubs or Lazard come out and are available, I mean, I think it's the odds-on favorite that they will win.
That would be interesting, and I think that would be a welcome move. Fans looking at this team, and when you think about it, I mean, given the whole way that they've bungled the quarterback position over the last 4 years since Roethlisberger left, and probably even before that because they didn't have a successor set up. Omar Khan, now that the Watt deal is done and everybody's happy and all smiles, and Watt put out a tweet, video saying, hey, he feels this is going to be a special season. Everybody's getting psyched up. Khan is getting pretty good marks for putting together this 2025 team. But then when you look at the national media who look at this roster, I just saw somewhere where ESPN is ranking the Steelers talent-wise, top to bottom roster in the bottom half of the 32-team league. I think they're ranking at number 19. So they're below the Mendoza line, how do you, I mean, obviously to me, it's a no-brainer that this is a better team than they were last year. At least that's my gut feeling looking at everything they've done. But when you look at this team, how do you grade it and analyze it? And what's your forecast going into training camp?
I mean, listen, I think it's a lot of talent, but I have questions about how the pieces cohesively meld together. I think that is something that I can buy into if that's your argument. I think they obviously got better by adding Jonnu Smith, but if you came to me and said, what's his fit going to be in this offense? I think that's a fair question to ask because, you have Pat Fryermuth and Darnell Washington, and some of that works against each other at some points. So there's questions there I have with some of the fit, but the talent's way better. I mean, I think they're better quarterback. They potentially could be better at running back. Listen, I've long been a believer, with all due respect to Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren's been better. I just have. I think he is better. Caleb Johnson's a really good player. So I think they potentially have an upgrade there at running back. They're better at tight end. They're marginally better at wide receiver. It's not much better. I still need to see more there for just be enthused by that room, but it's marginally better. And then hopefully the offensive line with the year of development just naturally becomes better with Fautanu around, McCormick getting into his second year, Jones hopefully having another year, Frazier in his second year. So you would hope that the O-line also takes a step forward. So in terms of the offense, I think the offense is better talent-wise. I think the defense is also probably better talent-wise. The corner room, not even close, right? The corner room's way better. Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay there now. That's better. The safety room, pretty easily worse without Minkah Fitzpatrick there. Linebacker, I mean, probably slightly worse because Atlanta Roberts is gone. Defensive line, you should see a boost there. So the defense, I think, adding the pieces that they did to the secondary should have higher expectations. And you would hope guys like Patrick Queen find more consistency and Joey Porter Jr. find more consistency. So you would hope that that's there. They're going to have a great front four. They've always had a great front four. The front seven should be really good. So I do think it's a better team than it was last year. But I've said this before. Just not sure how much it's going to change the results on the page. I think that they are kind of marginally better. I'm not sure that they are so much better that it's going to make them Super Bowl contenders. And I've just been skeptical about that. I have questions about some of I have questions at safety. How good is the offensive line going to be? I'm not really a huge believer in Broderick Jones. The tape's just really ugly from last year. It's possible he's good, but the tape was so ugly last year, I think you have to quell your expectations. Wide receiver, still a question. I think they can win a playoff game this year, but I don't buy into them as Super Bowl contenders in the AFC, so we will see. But I do think this is a better team overall. I think 19 is a little too low. I do.
At what point during training camp will we realize, or will it be revealed that Derek Harmon is the monster we think he is?
Yeah, you gotta get the padded practices for those. And that's what I love about training camp is we get to see them in pads. That's always what is so much fun. They'll be in pads. Their first padded day will probably be next Tuesday. And so we'll be able to see him for the first time in pads. But that's when we're going to find out. I mean, not really just in lineman one-on-ones, but just how does he look in team run? How does he look in those team periods? That's going to be the first time you're going to see it. And it's really going to take time because even really good rookies like Zach Frazier last year struggled at first and obviously had just a phenomenal rookie season. Nick Herbig, it took time for him to get going. And obviously, he was a gem of a 4th-round pick. So it takes time for these guys to kind of gel in. Probably after the first preseason game, if we're starting to see him really pop along and come along really nicely, I think you're going to figure that out, by week 3, right before that Jaguars game, if you got something. By week 3, Troy Fautanu looked like he was something last year, and he was going to start last year for a reason. I think we're going to find out about Harmon by then. Defensive linemen have the ability to pop in this environment too. They do. So we'll find out. I'm expecting to see Harmon have a pretty darn good camp.
All right. And I almost hesitate to mention this as we close out and we look ahead to tomorrow's arrival in Latrobe. But I mean, it seems like it always happens, and it's, you never know who or where it's going to strike. But the injury bug. I mean, last year we saw Russell Wilson hampered from almost day one, and that lingered into the season. We saw Roman Wilson hampered and hobbled, and then basically, according to Mike Tomlin, missed the moving train and never got on it, and pretty much never was a non-factor all season. A couple of years ago, one of their rookie cornerbacks went down and was
Corey Trace.
Yeah. So I mean, you hate to see that, but you almost expect it somewhere. I mean, what would be the most catastrophic injury that could happen?
Well, I think it would be really bad for them if they had a repeat of the Russell Wilson situation. I don't think you want Aaron Rodgers to get hurt at all.
Mm-hmm.
He needs time to build the chemistry in. Russ was there all spring at the very least. Rodgers was there just for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So that can't happen. But, catastrophic injury-wise, I mean, certainly I think Metcalf is up there. I think that one would be very bad for them. I think losing Zach Frazier would be really bad. But I think you look at the toughest injury that they could possibly absorb, and it really comes back. It's either Metcalf or it's Cam Hayward. Like, it really is. They cannot afford to lose Cam. He's such an anchor for them in the run game. He's such a dominant force. And when he was out in 23, man, it was just tough to stop teams on the ground. They couldn't replace him. They had no idea how to. They're a little more equipped now, but Harmon's still a rookie. He's still going to have growing pains. Benton is a player that I think is probably best utilized in kind of sporadic bunches rather than playing 80 to 90% of the snaps. So I think, you don't want to overexpose him either. So, I mean, there are some bad injuries they could suffer. Luckily, the Steelers haven't had one of those like crazy catastrophic injuries early recently, where they just lose like a star early in the season. So if that happens, I mean, the Steelers could certainly be in some trouble. But that has eluded them recently. So hopefully for the Steelers that continues. But I mean, even last year, I mean, they did lose Fautanu week 2, week 3. So, you hope he stays healthy and everything too. The biggest ones that I always worry about for injuries in training camp are the guys coming off them. Like I always worry for Fautanu, who's coming off a serious knee injury. I worry for guys like that. They kind of play with it on their mind and they try and do these different movements, and sometimes you can get hurt doing that. So always a little worry of guys that are coming off big injuries too in this setting. And sometimes, they're just getting back into the groove of things, right? Sometimes these are 9-month injuries and they just started kind of hitting their stride in June, and soft tissue injuries really pop up. That's a common thing too here with some guys that are coming back from serious injuries.
Well, we will hope that scenario does not rear its ugly head. We will think positive, Pittsburgh. Your team, your favorite football team, is about to enter training camp tomorrow. Nick will be there. We'll be checking out your coverage all week long, and I'll be joining you next Tuesday We'll do a podcast from out there in Latrobe after probably what will be the first padded practice. So welcome to training camp, Steelers. Let's go and get this 2025 season underway in the right fashion.